Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Laugh at Pat podcast, hashtag Patchats. So we are back with another podcast. I'm going to start doing more podcasts here on the Laugh at Pat network. The situation is basically that, doing fully formed comedy sketches, even ones that are kind of middling to not great, is taxing. And also, I'm also trying to learn German full time, really heavy on the air quotes on the full time there. I'm kind of trying to learn German. Lately, it's been a little bit more in the category of kind of. But, it's been taxing a little bit. And so I want to start doing more of these podcasts because also I really enjoy it. I have to say, I wasn't planning. I've been recording all of these great podcasts, these great conversations and interviews, kind of starting to get a little bit of a back catalog going. And I was going to release one of those for today's episode, St. Patrick's Day, my day, one might say. My name is Patrick. This is the Laugh at Pat network. So, laugh at Pat, St. Pat. Are you connecting the dots? I was also thinking about doing a real fake facts of St. Patrick's Day, but I was just like, after doing a full 40-minute late night television show, I was a little burnt out after last week, and maybe you were too, because that was a long video. As Anya said, she was like, I watched 10 minutes, it was 40 minutes long, and I was like, yeah, that is fair. That's fair. No, but I was really proud of last week's 1 year anniversary, the 1 year anniversary of Laugh at Pat, and a video every week for a year, and some weeks, a video plus a podcast. And I've decided now I'm going to take it back a little bit. I'll do 2 or 3 podcasts every month, and then, 1 or 2 comedy sketches every month. And hopefully that will make the quality of the comedy sketches increase as well. And maybe someday we'll, start ratcheting up the finished comedy sketch thing as well again. Let's see. We're going to see what happens. Look, to my 94 subscribers, it's a passion project. So I appreciate you guys watching, but I'm going to do it the way I want to do it for now. This is my second try at starting this intro, and I also don't really love how this one's going. I feel like I could have come out of the gates better. Well, let's talk about St. Patrick's Day. I wasn't planning to talk about St. Patrick's Day, but that's also part of the fun of the Laugh at Pat podcast experience. I write a whole page of notes of things I want to talk about, and things that I think will be, kind of funny or interesting. But we never know what's going to happen. Maybe I start recording, I start hearing my own voice. Hearing my own voice in the headphones is for me, my peak drug experience. I know I'm on camera, I can hear my own voice, and for someone who has this kind of certain type of, well, some would call self-centered personality type, that's a high, and I enjoy it. So anyways, and here's the thing, people are like, yeah, but it must be hard to watch back. It's not that hard to watch back. Honestly, sometimes I'm watching it, I'm like, that's pretty good. I like that. That's pretty good. So yeah, I might be a sociopath. Let's see. I haven't started killing small animals yet. So anyways, St. Patrick's Day. Here's the fun thing I wanted to say about St. Patrick's Day, and that I wasn't planning to say. And if my mother's watching and I got this story wrong, she can get in the comments and let me know, or shoot me a text. She has my information. But my belief is that I think that her due date was on St. Patrick's Day. I was supposed to be born on St. Patrick's Day, and she thought that would be fun. Her family has Irish heritage, and the way American people have Irish heritage. It's like Irish heritage. like everybody white in America is just like, I'm Irish or I'm Italian. Anyways, that's a whole nother street we could go down, huh? Let's not though. So anyways, I was supposed to be born on St. Patrick's Day, and my memory, and again, I might be getting this wrong, is my mother was pregnant and she got like lightly tapped by a bus, just like a light love tap, and like the bus was already like basically fully stopped, but it just had that little like extra lurch, and it somehow hit her, like bumped her and knocked her off of balance, and she rolled or something and went into labor because she was, ready to about ready to pop anyways. And so that's how I was not born on St. Patrick's Day. And also, fun story, I really began my life eating shit. And you might be asking yourself, is this like a bit, it's funny, like you're being self-deprecating, like you always are like fucking up, like, so you came out of the womb eating shit. Like, no, literally took a big fat dump in my mom's womb, and then my fat ass already was like, this could be nice. I'm kind of sick of all this like liquid diet, and so I came out choking on my own shit, and that's how I came into this world. And I mean, honestly, it seems like it would put a nice button on it if I could go out the same way. But some words for people out there that we could think about putting on my gravestone if we wanted to. But that's my St. Patrick's Day story. But these are also like childhood memories where I feel like I remember my parents telling me that, but I could imagine them being like, no, like none of that happened. That's not true. Like, no. So I definitely was in an incubator, and I'm 99% sure I ate shit. I'm like pretty positive I ate shit. And so anyways, what are we going to get into here? And so then I was born on March 12th, which luck would have it happened to be the 1-year anniversary of the Laugh at Pat network. Who would have planned it that way? Only someone who's, a little bit self-centered and wanted to try to use their birthday as a marketing tool. I'm having fun. Is anyone else having fun? I'm having fun. And so it was the Laugh at Pat 1-year anniversary and my birthday last Friday. And it was a great birthday, I have to say. I turned 31. And, I spent a lot of my 20s turning ages and being like, oh, fuck, 27 sounds old. Better make it through this year, you never know when you turn 27. And then, I turned 30 and I was kind of like, yeah, I'm ready for this. And 31, I don't love the sound of 31, but I'm fine, I'm happy to be in my 30s. It's a good thing, I think overall it's good. And I had a small, nice birthday party. Lots of people sent me very sweet messages and gave me some very cute little presents, which I will not go through all of those and name them, but it was very sweet. Any of you who reached out, thank you. Any of you who gave me a little something that was very nice. And here's a weird thing about my birthday. Is there anything more self-indulgent than having a podcast where you just talk? Just you, and you're like, and let's talk about my birthday. No, here's a weird thing is, despite the fact that I clearly have a little bit of an appetite for attention and whatnot, I actually always kind of like have not been the biggest fan of my birthday. Like for some reason, like that's the one moment where I'm like, no, I don't want this type of attention. This is too much. And I don't know what that's about, but like even my parents tell stories about this of like me being like 6 years old and being like, I don't want to turn 7. I'm not ready to be 7. And I remember what I do remember is I remember being like a teenager and like turning 16 and being like fucked up about it, like, oh fuck, I'm 16 already, like, oh shit, like like I don't know, I had this one like weird dark birthday where I can't remember what it was. It was like, I guess it must have been like 16 or 17, and I was like, really, yeah, I don't know, it like messed me up. And I remember just like I like went for a drive. Like this was the age where it was still thrilling to just like go for a drive. So I, fired up the 97 Saturn with no power steering and no power brakes, and I was like, I'm just going to like drive to the city. And I just drove to the city at like 2 a.m. and like didn't do anything, just like drove around, like saw some areas where I was like, that'll be too hectic. That's too much. Then turned around, came home, and was like, yeah, that's what teenage angst is. It's like, I just got to go for a drive, and then like drive through the misty city, like listening to music, feeling like, yeah, this is something. And then you get home and you're like, that wasn't anything. So yeah, I don't know. Birthdays have always been kind of weird. And like the last few years, I've taken the like very low key approach to my birthday. Like for my 30th birthday, I just, like, Anya came to visit me in California. We went for a hike that day. And then that night we went out to dinner with my parents and my godparents. And that, I remember being like, I remember as someone in their 20s, like talking about 30th birthdays, like, oh, we're going to go so buck wild. We're going to be crazy. And actually, like, the kind of what my 24-year-old self would have been like, puke, you're so lame, was like the nicest 30th birthday I could have had. And yeah, so the birthdays before that have been just, spending it with Anya, or before that, like just having my 26th birthday was like, I went for a hike, got a tattoo, hung out with my mom. Like it was just like that was more my speed. I started realizing like, okay, like I don't like it trying to make it a thing on my birthday. That doesn't work out for me. But this year it was a little bit more of a thing. It was a small thing, COVID responsible. But I mean, also at this point, like, Jesus fucking Christ, like I've been joking about this with my friends, but like I'm so done with the COVID thing. I'm like, really, like, it's bad, and I understand like Anya's like very much more like, no, we need to be responsible. The cases are rising, and I know it frustrates her that but I'm like, nah, I can't. Like I'm so so over it. But no, we had a small responsible thing, whatever, and so, but it was really nice, to have like a small little birthday party. We had a dance party. We hugged, we cuddled. A bunch of my friends here in Berlin all pitched in together and got me a bicycle, which was fucking really rad and sweet. And it was just a lovely, lovely night. And I felt loved, and it was the perfect kind of thing. And I was saying the next day we were hanging out, kind of, eating some pad thai from the Asian store downstairs and rehashing. And I was like, when things do open up, I'm going to also miss the kind of like small, just, 5 people, 6 people, intimate living room thing. There's no line at the bathroom. It's not an ordeal to just get a drink of water. If you want to change the music, you can. If you want to just like sit down on a couch and cuddle, it's not like disgusting to sit down somewhere. So yeah, it was really nice. And finishing the Laugh at Pat 1 year anniversary special video was also, I was really proud of it. I let it get to me. I'm willing to say that. I can come out and be honest and say, you know what, I let it get to me a little bit. And that's the problem with doing this type of thing. It's like sometimes I do get a little bit too concerned with, the response, or getting it out there or whatever. And I do have to remember, like, it's for me. And I will say, it was really, what I love about the process of like making videos is getting an idea, and then once it starts to come together and you start, like, you had this idea in your head, and then you spent 7 hours on a Saturday talking to a wall, pretending to be a guest or a host, by yourself, and also like saying the same thing over and over again like a crazy person. If you wanted a really crazy, like if you've heard of the Instagram account Influencers in the Wild, and maybe I've said this on here before, but every time I shoot a video, I really feel like I get crazy influencer in the wild vibes, because I'm just like, doing my like little thing in front of the camera, acting out. There's just like, in that case where I'm pretending to have a conversation, I'm just talking to a wall wildly and then repeating the same thing over and over again to try to get exactly the right take and, voice intonation, which really makes you think, if it took that many takes to get that level that I achieved in that video, maybe acting's not my gig. But anyways, in the end, when it came together, I was really proud of that and proud of the work I did over the last year with that. So for all of you who've watched and sent me nice messages and about that and just supported me in any of those videos and stuff, thank you. I appreciate that. So anyways, that was supposed to be a 5-minute segment, and now we're 17 minutes in. But, that's classic Laugh at Pat podcast. That's what the people tune in to see. So this is a fun thing that I wanted to talk about 17 minutes into the podcast. That was the plan. Was, Anya got me a skateboard, a longboard, for my birthday, because I live right now right by this former airport called Tempelhoffeld here in Berlin. And it was an airport, and then they closed the airport and turned it into a park, but they didn't like change anything. So it's like all of the runway and everything is still there. And so it's like this great place for people to roller skate, rollerblade, skateboard, bike, all this kind of stuff. And then there's also like green space for people to hang out. There's a great dog park that like Anya and I have gotten a little too comfortable in just like going to the dog park to watch other people's dogs. Definitely not creepy. And the debate always turns into like, at what point are we going to get so crazy that we're like, we could go inside of the chain link fence where people's dogs are without a dog? Like, are people going to say something? Could we get away with that? We haven't gotten to that point yet, but I got this longboard, and I was like really excited to go take it out at Tempelhoffeld and like ride it around. And like the total poser that I am, I got my like childhood Spitfire sweatshirt that I used to wear when I was like trying to be a skater when I was 13. Now I've come full circle. I'm 31 wearing the same sweatshirt, and I'm like pumped on my skateboard. And I was like I got my headphones going with some sick tunes. I put my Vans on, like specifically wore my Vans because I'm like, these are skating shoes, and I'm a skater now. And I'm pretentious. And so like I went down there, and like at first I was like, oh my God, like I look like such a poser. Like I can't quite, like I'm not like every time I like am riding the skateboard with, like doing the one foot, like pushing yourself, and then you get the second foot on, and it's like a bit of a like moment of panic as you put the second foot on. Like, am I going to eat shit? Am I doing this right? Do I look stupid? And so, I had that going on. And then, by the end of like, I don't know, I was skating around there for like an hour or something. And then I was like getting it. And also it's like a nice board and easy place to ride. Like no hill, like there's nothing difficult about it. It really should be the easiest thing. A child can and should do it. And so I was like riding out to leave, and now I'm kind of like feeling myself. And as I'm riding out, I see like another guy riding in on his skateboard, kind of like not wearing cool skater clothes like I was wearing, like not a sick Spitfire sweatshirt from 2003 or Vans, which are skating shoes, by the way. Like, you're not even wearing skating shoes, bro. You're gonna wear your running shoes. And I just caught myself like fully genuinely looking at him and thinking to myself, like I just watched the thought go across my consciousness of me looking at him being like, you fucking poser. And I was like, I literally wore my 12-year-old self's sick Spitfire skating sweatshirt and Vans to like go longboard at the easiest place to longboard in the world. did it for all of 40 minutes, and my monkey brain saw someone else wearing running shoes on a longboard and was like, poser. So I just thought that was funny. I like when our brains do stupid stuff like that. I don't know if other people's brains do stupid stuff like that. When my brain does stuff like that, I think it's hilarious to see my wildly unself-confident and judgmental brain at work. I've progressed at both of those things a lot, because I guess the difference between being 31 and like 21 is when I was 21, I would have really internalized both of those things as like facts. Like, I'm a worthless poser piece of shit. And then I would have also been like, that guy's also really a poser, and that's also true somehow. And now at 31, I can just be like, well, yeah, I'm full of shit and also a judgmental asshole, and I can laugh at myself about that. I can laugh at my silly brain making these silly thoughts, making me feel like an idiot. So that was a story I wanted to share. That was something. We can just cross that off. I'm a poser. Yeah, and we can also cross off this. Okay, so this is something else. Here's the COVID update. COVID. Besides the fact that I'm over it, I know I shouldn't say that. I think maybe I'm not. I shouldn't say that, but I am. I just am. I feel like I put on a brave face. I made it for almost all of a year. I feel like I made it for about 9.5 months. I took the COVID baby to term, and here's the thing. It's, fourth trimester, and I'm ready to, let's yeah. Anyways, yeah. So, but today I went out on the street, and I guess the other interesting thing about living here in Berlin as a illiterate American is that I have no idea what's happening in the German news, and I don't follow it. And so I only learn, what the newest regulation is by just like looking around or someone telling me. Like I told Anya a while ago, I was like, everybody on the train is like wearing the medical masks now, and she's like, yeah, that's the new regulation. You're not allowed to wear the cloth mask. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't know. All the signs were still in German to me. I was just going along with it. And so I guess today they must have opened things back up a little bit, because, up until this point, it's just been grocery stores. Yeah, basically just like grocery stores and, some kind of like the German equivalent of Target or something. It's called Real. I don't know. That's also open. It has some stuff that's not just food or whatever, but everything else has been closed down. And so I came out onto the main street here by my apartment today, and H&M was open. The clothing store, H&M, and also TK Maxx, which is German's version of TJ Maxx. And both of those stores were open. And here's how I know I'm not the only one who's sick of COVID. This is how desperate people are. There was a line around the block to go to H&M. Like, people are so desperate to just do anything. They're like, oh, fuck. Like, even just to wander around an H&M for a little while would be such sweet relief. Like, I could order any of the products they have online, take them home, try them on, and if I don't like them, still bring them back and get something else. Basically, the same exact thing as shopping. But I'm so desperate for anything to do. I'm going to wait in a line around the block to just go to a fucking H&M. Like, I thought that was funny. So I wrote that down. I was like, oh, that was a funny thought. I could share that on the podcast. I could share that on the podcast. I don't know if it was so funny. I don't know. But yeah, so people, I'm not the only one who's desperate, is my point. If people are lining up around the block. Okay, so here's the last thing I'll tell you before we go into the second half of the show. Of course, we have some Yahoo News headlines, and I also have a lot of stuff to recommend this week. I'm very excited about my recommendations list. I have a lot of fun stuff to recommend. But the last thing I wanted to do was my German update. And you know what? I'm looking at the clock. We're already at 25 minutes. And I'm kind of thinking maybe we should do German in the second half. German update in the second half. And, here's the thing. I actually own and operate this small business. I don't think it qualifies as a business because I don't, earn any money from it. All I do is spend money on it. But it's my decision. And, I've kept my business open throughout COVID for the people. I did it for the people because they're desperate. They're standing in line for H&M. That's crazy. So yeah, anyways, we're going to do the German update in the second half. I'm going to take a quick pause here. You're going to, see the Patchat's logo and the Patchat song, and then we're going to be back with the second half of the show. German update, Yahoo News headlines, a fun list of stuff I've been enjoying recently. Guys, you got to stick around for the second half. So let's do that. We will be right back with more hashtag Patchats. And we are back with the second half of this St. Patrick's Day hashtag Patchats. Got a little weird there in the first half. Gonna keep that vibe going in the second half. I promised you that we would talk about German, my Deutsch learning. I'm going to be honest. I have not been doing so hot at it. I have not been really applying myself. The thing is, I have to say, I graduated college in 2012, and I haven't been a student in, 8 years. And, now I'm going to class every day, 3 hours a day, homework, full time. And I have to say, it's been really cool to kind of, as a, 30, 31-year-old, become a student again and just remember how great it is to cut class. 'Cause God, even when you're paying for it yourself, I mean, I was paying for it back then too. I just didn't totally conceptualize the idea. God, it feels good to not go to class. It just feels good when you have something that you're supposed to do and then you don't do it. And that's really gets to the core of some of the problems with my personality, but we don't need to go down that part of the path. But I have not been, what you would call applying myself. And, turns out if you don't work at learning a very difficult language, you don't end up learning that very difficult language. And I will take 99% of the blame. I do have to say, and maybe this is a bit of an American perspective, but, it does kind of seem like so I'm already second guessing this as it's coming out of my mouth because I think, for example, in France, this probably wouldn't be true. But, for example, traveling in Central America and South America, if you bust out your kind of broken, pretty shitty Spanish, they kind of clap you on the back and good effort, good for you for trying to learn our language. That's great. And they really, try. And I really do feel here there's a level of you're saying a word and a sentence and they're looking at you what are you saying? And you say it again and then you say it a third time and then they say exactly verbatim the word that you just said 3 times back to you and you're yeah, that's the word I'm trying to say. And then they're oh, and it's there was no difference in what you said and what I said. I mean, there must be a difference, obviously, because no one understands me here. I clearly have a stupid, terrible German accent. I don't know. The Spanish accent is maybe I just listened to Spanish radio as a kid, so I have that Spanish rhythm more in my head, and I don't have the German one. The German learning generally is not going so great. I did learn a fun thing though about German this recently, which is when you insult someone, you can do it either personally or formally, depending, because there's the different, there's like, there's, me, there's a tense for that. This is the other problem is I'm trying to explain this. I don't even know the English words of like how to describe this because I'm not smart. And so, but there's a way to say like me, talking to you about something like, hey, you, and then he, she, and then there's like we, them, and then like a formal kind of like that you would use in a store with like an older person. And I learned this week that, in German, you can actually, you could insult someone with the personal, du. Or you could also insult them, if it's a more of a formal situation, if you don't know them, if they're older, you could also use the formal Z to insult them. And I just thought that was a fun little nugget that I wanted to just into the podcast. I thought into the podcast. So yeah, that was good. And then the other thing I wanted to share about my German, mein Deutsch lernen experience was so my girlfriend Anya, who if you watch the podcast regularly, I adore and care very much for, and is German. The reason I'm living here in Germany, something I never thought I was going to do, but have ended up loving, and also a large part of the reason I'm trying to learn this language, because honestly, if it weren't for the fact that I was like dating someone and like living in the country, I would have quit for sure already. I'm like already pretty close to quitting, and as it is, because it's just hard. And that's another big takeaway I've taken from learning German, besides the fact that cutting class feels so good, is just that I'm not good at doing stuff that's like hard for me. Like that's not really what I'm good at. And that's maybe one bad thing about doing the fishing, is I get to spend like most of the year not doing any stuff I don't want to do. And I maybe need to work that muscle a little bit more, because like someday I'm going to have to get a real job again, and that's going to be a rough shock. Anyways, I digress. So, Anya and I have a deal where she makes the toothbrushes at night, because I don't want to make them. Once I'm getting cozy in bed, it's just like, yeah, the idea of getting up and making the toothbrush, it's just really hard. And, I'm embarrassed to say that, sometimes I don't get up and do it. If I'm by myself, like there have been moments in my life in the past, not now. I'm 31. We're talking about brushing our teeth. That's pretty basic. Of course, I brush my teeth. Yeah. So Anya makes the toothbrushes. And in return, in the morning when I get up, I make the coffee, and I bring her, some coffee to wake her up. And we have a what some might call cute, probably most would call weird relationship. And luckily, she likes my dumb shit and will like yes and all of my dumb little things. And I make up like stupid little songs variously, and she will just like fully just add the second verse, which is great. But so then it turned into this thing where when I would bring the coffee, I also sang like this little song, like hot coffee for you, hot coffee for you. She's not going to like that I'm sharing this, but so like then it turned into this little thing like that. I sing the song and I bring the coffee, and it's like it's our little like morning routine tradition, whatever. And so then the other day I had the brilliant idea. I was like, I'm learning German, and I was like, I can sing the song for Anya in German. I can translate our little morning ritual into her mother tongue. And so, I made her the nice hot coffee, and then I was bringing it to her asleep in bed, and I translated our little morning ritual song, and like, ich mache Kaffee for dir, ich mache Kaffee for dir. And just without having opened her eyes yet, like not awake, she goes, for dish. Because I had, of course, made the mistake that of using the accusative verb form. When what I meant to do when I made her the hot coffee and brought it to her in bed and sang her the morning song that she likes and translated it into her mother tongue that I had been learning full time, I forgot, of course, that after the für it would be the dative verb tense and not the accusative, which would be dish. But I just thought that was funny. Just her foot, like, just still asleep, not hasn't said a word yet. The first thing before she's even opened her eyes, just wrong verb tense. Dative, not accusative. So that's the German update. I thought that was funny. Maybe that's gonna fall on its face. You know what? I'll be really, really honest with you guys. I already told that story once at a party, and at my birthday party, at a party. Like, I'm just like going to parties, like I'm the fucking Great Gatsby, and it did well there. And I thought, like, that could be a bit, maybe. It needs work, but I thought it was funny. So anyways, let's get into some Yahoo News headlines. I've been collecting these since all the way back in February. Wow. Can that be right? Did I already maybe? No, yeah, this must be. So this first one is an ad from Finance Nancy. And, this is just the kind of thing that they like scoop in at Yahoo News. And this segment has now, it started as like these funny headlines and like that's something I can riff on, and then it's just turned into like my self-righteous take on like the media and politics, which is also like the state of media, right? Like trashy media was supposed to be like something fun, and now it's also turned into like self-righteous and political. But so they put these ads in that make it look like it's a real headline. And the first one here is Kelly Clarkson won't apologize for new self at 38. Kelly Clarkson steps out after a major transformation, and take a deep breath before you see how she looks today. And I just had to include it because this photo that they chose next to it is like, it is so photoshopped. I mean, it must be like, this is not how I've never seen Kelly Clarkson look like this. I mean, she looks morbidly obese in the photo that they used here. And I just thought it was funny because it's like, it's a clickbaity thing. They make it look like real news. It's not news. And poor Kelly Clarkson, they made her look like this for this thing for people to be like, ooh, how does she look at 38? So anyways, that's a good jumping off point. So this next one is also, I love, my favorite news on Yahoo News is really the celebrity news. I think that's probably the best lane of what they do. And so this is a funny one. Billie Eilish admits she didn't recognize Orlando Bloom at Coachella. I thought it was some dude that Katy Perry met. Which for me, these stories are interesting because it's like why? Why is this a news story? I'm not exactly sure why this is a news story, but I mean, it was clearly captivating enough for me to be like, well, I need to screenshot this and talk about it on the pod. That could be some great content for the pod. But why should Billie Eilish know who Orlando Bloom is? Like, I mean, how old was Billie Eilish when Lord of the Rings came out? Like, I mean, I feel like Orlando Bloom hasn't done anything relevant besides dating Katy Perry in like more than a decade. Like, I feel like Billie Eilish was like 5 the last time Orlando Bloom was at the box office, and maybe that just is revealing my own failures of pop culture. But anyways, I don't know. I just thought it was silly and funny, and And those stories, I also really think to myself, like, whose publicist is putting this out? Because it's like, it's a great way to get Billie's name out there, I guess. Also great for Katie and Orlando. So it's just like, yeah, or probably they all have the same publicist. And they're like, this is a good story. Let's get this out there. Okay, so this next one is not a Yahoo News headline, but also just when I see funny things on the internet, I'm like, I have to take a screenshot of this. And so this next one is a YouTube thumbnail for a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe and Max Holloway on genetically engineered monkeys. And look, the Joe Rogan podcast has it's gotten so big that it has in some ways become like a meme of itself. And this particular YouTube thumbnail is just like the face that he's making, the photo that they used. It's like it's very clickbaity, and it's exactly like the type of like dumb bro conversation that that people like make fun of the JRE for having, and also decry its influence on young people and whatnot. I mean, I think there's some truth. I mean, as he's, I don't need to go into a whole thing about the Joe Rogan podcast. I think he has. It's been interesting to me to hear some voices that I probably wouldn't have heard if it weren't for his show, and hear them in a longer form conversation. Some of the stuff people say is right. Some of the stuff people are just they haven't actually listened to any episodes. But yeah, this isn't entertaining. Let's move on. So the next headline. Politics. Here we go. Joe Biden's German Shepherd sent home to Delaware after biting incident at White House. And I just thought this was a funny story and a funny headline because, well, one, it was like such a media darling story of that, Joe Biden's bringing a dog back to the White House. And I mean, look, Trump is like an evil, most likely sociopath, and the fact that he didn't have a dog is like a great indication of that. But the media's treatment of Biden is pretty. I mean, I don't think that there hasn't been a hard question since the campaign began, and I haven't seen like a single negative headline or negative story since he's become president. And so they loved this story about him bringing a dog back to the White House, and I just thought it was funny. Of course, the senior citizen president was. I mean, no president is probably training their dog. Of course, they should be outsourcing that. But whoever's training the White House dogs, they did a bad job. It bit somebody. I also thought it was funny because sent home to Delaware has a real we sent him to the farm vibe to it, which I mean, dog death is not funny. That's not a funny subject, but they didn't kill these dogs. Well, let's hope. And so I thought that was a funny headline. Let's move on though. Okay. The fun thing is for this example, I screenshotted this back on March 10th at 1:05 p.m. I think this one goes. That's right. Okay, this one goes with another one because I was like, what did I think how was I going to go off of this? So the first, this was as a lifestyle headline. Dear white people, please stop disguising your white guilt as an apology. And then the next one, the next story right below it was Corey Taylor speaks out against cancel culture after Eminem backlash. And I just thought that was funny. The juxtaposition of kind of Yahoo News. I mean, they're definitely not covering very many conservative angles, but they're kind of trying to cover, just having these two headlines next to each other, really trying to cover all their angles. And it's just, God, the discourse in in media these days. I mean, Yahoo News is not real media, but yeah, just the public discourse at this point it's all the worst. It's just, yeah. I don't need to go into it more. That's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be funny. So it makes me sad. And here's the thing I want to say about it is I'm also questioning myself with it where, and I wish more, that's what I feel is missing is more people questioning also what their beliefs about these things are and what their beliefs are, because, my beliefs have kind of moved somewhat, I wouldn't say radically, but I have some pretty deep divides with my beliefs versus, people like my parents, my other, adults who I respect in my life, friends, whatever. And, I might be the one that's wrong, but Also, yeah. Anyways, maybe I'll cut that out. Okay. White House press secretary Jen Psaki confirms Major Biden was a bad dog, has no update on Biden cat. And that is the kind of stuff that they're covering in the White House press room these days. So another Biden dog story there. Let's keep moving on. This Oprah photo is quickly becoming the latest example of digital blackface. Oprah with Meghan and Harry, a CBS primetime special, pictured Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, with Oprah Winfrey. So basically, I clicked this article, but the article was about how, like, you know, Oprah's expression as she was hearing Meghan's stories of, racism within the royal family or whatever, became a meme, and they were saying that this is like digital blackface. And God, that's the thing. I think that's the point I was trying to make with the other two headlines, is it's like the conservative people who are like, it's a culture war. They're stopping publishing these Dr. Seuss books. It's an outrage, and everybody, the bathrooms, and then also like kind of more libertarian, kind of Joe Rogan ilk people who are like constantly decrying cancel culture, and like comedians. I mean, that's like I consume a lot of like comedy podcasts, which is what I'm going to talk about next, which will hopefully be more interesting and entertaining than this Yahoo News headlines. Hey, Patrick is not doing a great job of communicating his viewpoints right now. But comedians decry cancel culture all the time too, and it's also a bit kind of like annoying, and it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, people are like a lot more sensitive about how we say things, about what we say and whatnot. It's just my place as a white male to give my hot take on it, and it just feels like it's gone too far, man. No, I don't know. There is this feeling where it's like, God damn it, like, where is the like reasonable footing here? Because you look around and it's like, Oprah being a meme, is that digital blackface? That feels overblown. And then you, as a white person, your butthole scrunches up and you're like, I'm not allowed to say something like that. I'm not allowed to comment on, how race feels for people of color. And that's maybe valid, but I don't know. It's, this is really not a great segment. So we're going to end on a fun little last headline that I just pulled from today. Doorbell video captures plane crashing into car. I watched the video, and the fun thing about this, or the interesting thing I thought about this segment maybe needs to die. And I want to blame Yahoo News, but it might be my fault. But I thought this was interesting because they say in the article, as you watch the video, they're like, yeah, the people in this plane died, which you can clearly see. Like, the plane, it's a small 2-person plane. It hits a car and then explodes into a ball of fire. And you sit there and you're kind of like, I just watched 2 human beings like die. That's kind of fucked up. And it, again, I feel like is a interesting perspective on what's happening in media. Welcome to my comedy podcast. This is a comedy podcast where I talk about, the political discourse and the media landscape. That's what the people want to hear on this channel. No, but what I thought was interesting about it is, like, I remember I took like a journalism ethics class in college, and, I studied broadcasting, and, we watched a video in class of this guy jump off a bridge and commit suicide. And they had the video footage because it was like a standoff for a while. And the cop almost grabs him and he misses him and he disappears, and he falls to his death. And it was like, I mean, that video is like really burned into my memory because it's awful. Like, you realize like that guy just died. And then we watched the segment, the way that they produced it, and they don't include the part where he jumps. And they kind of talked about the ethics of why you wouldn't just show that on the news. and the reasons why, ethically and morally, the journalistic standard is not to just kind of go for the cheap hit with that. And I just thought it's interesting, 9 years later, that just on the very front page of Yahoo News, they're like, hey, check out these 2 people die in a fiery plane crash. Click the link to watch. And that's kind of where news has gone. So, surprise, surprise, Yahoo News is not a bastion of journalistic integrity. But I mean, also even on like my mom was telling me on the New York Times website, they have a section that's just like, oh, what's happening on like funny bits on late night television, which is apparently like New York Times level of news now. So we got a few minutes left here, and I really wanted to talk about stuff I'm into, because I've discovered a lot of fun stuff that I'm into the last couple weeks. And the first thing I have to shout out is the Honeydew podcast with Ryan Sickler. The Honeydew podcast on YouTube. It's on all platforms. And I got introduced to this podcast because of the Your Mom's House podcast, which is also a very funny comedy podcast. And I feel like we're going to go to a quick commercial here so that I can really get into the stuff I'm into, and then we'll get out of here. And, this one will be a little bit long, and that maybe I'm going to edit out some of that Yahoo News stuff. That was a little bit rough. Well, that was a little bit rough. Maybe I need to spend a little more time looking at those headlines. Yeah. All right. We'll be right back with the stuff I'm into. All right. And we're back with the last, a little bit more lighthearted and fun section, stuff I'm into. So I was talking about the Honeydew podcast with Ryan Sickler, Honeydew podcast on YouTube, Honeydew on all the, podcasting places. But I have to say, I have discovered a lot of amazing comedians on that podcast. Tim Dillon, who I've mentioned many times on this show, I discovered him on that podcast, and he has an incredible story. Jeremiah Watkins, the list goes on. There's a lot of people, and then their podcast that I discovered through them being guests on this podcast. And the idea of it is, his tagline that he uses is, it's the stories behind the storytellers. And there are some incredible stories. Tim Dillon, for example, was a child actor. That fizzled out by the time he was 13, and then he started hanging out at a literal crack den with his friends and was like doing blow and acid at his 8th grade graduation and like crazy stuff. And he shares all of these stories. And Jeremiah Watkins had this skin cancer thing, and then the episode I just watched that was really funny and emotional. I mean, I cried and I laughed. He was reading his in a journal of when he was 21, 22 when he moved to LA, and he had some really funny stories in there, and he had a really a sad story also about a friend of his passing. And what he does so beautifully is they take these really dark, hard stories, and he finds a way to kind of laugh at them, and they're laughing at their pain. And that's also the other idea behind this podcast. And I think I've probably mentioned it on here before, but I've just been re-getting into it. There have been some great new episodes. The Jeremiah Watkins second episode just came out recently. I really recommend that one. As I said, I laughed, I cried. It was great. And so I really wanted to recommend the Honeydew podcast, and also the other one specifically on there, besides the Tim Dillon, the Jeremiah Watkins. There's also a one with this woman who's a comedian now who became a meth addict for a while, and she talks about losing her teeth and all of this crazy stuff. But it's fascinating. It's riveting. It's funny. They make jokes about it, and they find a way to laugh at it. And I mean, I think that's what the beauty of comedy should be. It's taking these painful, dark experiences and finding a way to make it funny and make it okay through laughter and whatnot. And so the other arc that I want to talk about on there is I was just recently listening to one of them today. He has a comedian Joey Diaz on his show, and he's had him on as a series as he talks about these different periods of his life from childhood, and now this one I was listening to today is kind of his like early 20s. And Joey Diaz's life is kind of like Jack Kerouac's On the Road meets American Gangster meets The Sopranos. And he's had an insane life. He was like a con man, criminal. You know, both of his parents, he was a Cuban American growing up in New York City in the 70s. Both his mom, you know, ran a bar and was, you know, involved in some kind of tough stuff. And he's just had a very interesting and a very hard life. And he's done some pretty like kind of like despicable, fucked up shit also along the way. And it honestly, as I was watching it, I was like, this is like, this is what Martin Scorsese should be working on. Is he should be making like a full blown series of this guy's life, because it's also you know, kind of the story of America as the way, you know, as things changed, and also his own journey. Joey Diaz, the comedian's journey, is, you know, going through all of this hard stuff in his childhood, growing up around, you know, the mob and all of this crazy stuff, and being homeless and drug addiction, and, you know, being a con man, robbing people, you know, all this stuff, and ended up being, you know, this very sweet guy. And I think that was what I was also thinking about with that is there isn't a lot of room in today's culture. Oh boy, here we go again. He's talking about the culture again. But there's not a lot of room in today's culture for redemption, or for like growing and changing past the, you know, the shit that you did in your past. And I mean, I think it's an open question and conversation to be had of like who can be redeemed, who can come back, and who should, you know, we should just be like, you know, whatever. You're not allowed to live anymore. I mean, not literally live, but, you know, yeah, that, so his is an amazing story and interesting. And, you know, he grew up around, you know, gangsters, Italian mob, you know, these Cuban American gangsters in the 70s. So he doesn't always use like exactly the right language and stuff, but you can also tell he doesn't have like malice in his heart. And it's just a fascinating story. And I was really thinking like, this could be like a mini series, and they could have him in it like at a barbecue, kind of telling the story, and then it goes into each thing. But it would have to be like a series. And so, you know, someone should do that. That's what I should say is, if anybody with some clout ever finds this clip, someone should goddamn make that podcast series into like a really like a mini series at least. Like each episode could be like its own feature length film. Like it would be an incredible story, and you should definitely check out those podcasts. Now, the other podcast I recently discovered was comedian Jeremiah Watkins podcast, which is a totally different end of the spectrum, but I discovered it through the Honeydew podcast. And he has a podcast where it's just, I love when I discover a podcast and it inspires me to be like, oh, this, you know, I think people have a conception now kind of what a podcast can be based off of things like, you know, WTF with Mark Maron, or the Joe Rogan Experience, or also like NPR and stuff, conversation, or, you know, a podcast like Serial or something, this type of thing. But, you know, there's still so many different ways that it can go. We have this ability to self-produce and make these silly, weird things. And Jeremiah Watkins has made an incredibly silly, amazing podcast called Jeremiah Wonders. It's funny, it's weird, it's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway meets Mark Rebelay. You know, it's very improv-y, and basically he has a guest on, and the guest they has a mic, and he has a mic that have these little like voice modulators on them, and so they do all these like weird little bits and characters. They have these like call-ins, like people calling into the show that to talk and stuff, and he has like weird segments on the show, like one called Wigging Out, where he just has a bag of wigs, and he and the guest like will put on wigs and then just do characters with these wigs. He has something called like Saxy Time or something that kind of ends the show, where the guest will tell a story about like getting intimate, like a kind of a sexual story, funny or weird or whatever, and he just plays sax. He does a musical accompaniment on saxophone, and it's fucking hilarious. And his show too is like very undiscovered, I have to say. Like, I mean, I don't know what it is like for the people listening to the audio only version, but on YouTube, and I have to say, like, this podcast has a lot visually. It's, there's like episodes that are like 20,000 views. Like, I watched one the other day, it was like 3,000 views, and I was like, how does this only have 3,000 views? It makes me be like, oh fuck, like I have no chance. Like, this is hilarious and inspiring. And the best thing I can say about it is it really made me be like, what can I do? I want to do more like silly, weird stuff within this idea of podcasting, because it really is this opportunity to do like kind of pirate radio. And so someone like him and that podcast, it was really inspiring to find it. And I've been really into it recently. So I also highly recommend that. Isn't this a fun podcast where I just sit around and spend 10 minutes recommending other people's podcasts? That's a fun thing. I also watched an incredibly interesting documentary series called The Perfect Crime, that is about the period after the Berlin Wall fell and East and West Germany needed to become unified. And it centers around this guy who is running a department, I guess, of the government, whose job it was basically to take all of these state-run East German companies and privatize them and sell them off and whatnot. And, maybe it's just my own, kind of imbecile American point of view, but you have this idea of the wall coming down and how terrible it was in East Germany, and then everybody was just happy and it was great. And it was like really not that way. And it's crazy to see footage of, these terrorist attacks and assassinations happening in the 90s during my lifetime here in Germany, a place that's now, feels safer than the States in a lot of ways. But so that part is really interesting, but also to like kind of learn that there's so, of course, I mean, as with anything in history, it's like there's so much more to what was going on in East Germany than just the parts that were really bad and shitty. And also interesting dynamics, like the fact that there was, basically 0% unemployment in East Germany before the wall came down. And then they started selling off these companies, and a lot of them were bought by like West German companies, and the companies they bought would be basically essentially what would have been their competition. So they would just demolish the factory. And so the unemployment rate was like skyrocketing, like 20%, 30%, like really crazy numbers in East Germany. And so I don't know, it was really fascinating to learn about. It's well done. I got to practice being like, oh, I recognize that word. He said was. I didn't get the rest of the sentence, but he definitely said was in there. That was definitely one of the words. So I got to practice listening to my German with that. But it has subtitles, of course. And so I really highly recommend that series if you're kind of interested in German history, or also just like the ideas of kind of communism and capitalism. And as with many things, I think it sometimes gets boiled down to simplistic views on both. So anyways, I can really highly recommend that series. And next week, we're going to have another podcast, my conversation with Berlin-based comedian Chris Doring, who grew up in Berlin. He was born a few years before the wall came down, and so he kind of grew up during this period. And I think he thought, which is also what I thought coming into the interview. Like, oh, we're gonna talk about comedy, talk about his life, traveling a bit and whatnot. And I had just finished this documentary series, and I was like, so you grew up in East Berlin, and just was like grilling him with these questions. He was like, I mean, he was very kind enough to answer all of my queries about what was going on in East Germany and these layers of different meaning and culture in the reunification and everything. But maybe the beginning of the podcast is not the funniest thing ever. So anyways, that's coming next week, and I can recommend that. And then the last thing I have to recommend, it is a comedy podcast. This you might have forgotten during my long rambling podcast reviews and that whole cultural media landscape talk I did during the Yahoo News headlines thing. Oh yeah, but it is a comedy podcast, and in the world of comedy, there's a new documentary out about comedian Patrice O'Neal, who passed away in 2013, I think. And it's on Comedy Central. You can watch it for free. I had to give them my junk email, and I got 24 hours to watch stuff on their website for free. And so I watched it, and it's a really well done documentary about a comedian who, I think if he hadn't passed away, could have been kind of in the realm of, Dave Chappelle or certainly like Bill Burr, on that level, and someone who was very opinionated and had some interesting, hot and hard takes that probably in today's level of discourse would not have been super well received on the internet. But he was an interesting guy. I think he had a somewhat troubled life in some ways, but it was really interesting to learn about his life and appreciate him as a comedian who never really got to be totally fully realized, other than his one special elephant in the room, which you can also check out. And also, I love these type of documentaries about a comedian or the comedy scene, because it's also fun for me to kind of see the dynamics of the comedy scene in the 80s and the 90s in Boston and New York and these type of things. So I really, really enjoyed that documentary. And for anybody who's into comedy, I definitely recommend it. I feel like this podcast now, since I reviewed other people's podcasts, why not take a minute to review my own podcast? I'm going to say I feel like this podcast started out hot. Actually, that's not true. I feel like it started off kind of a little off kilter. I feel like about the 8-9 minute mark, we started hitting our stride. I feel like, 9 minutes to the end of the first half, we were doing pretty good. Second half came back okay. I think the German bit was kind of good. Really went off the track during the Yahoo News headlines. I might need to dump that as a segment on the show, just generally. And then, we did okay during the recommended stuff. I mean, if you check those things out, I think you would enjoy them, and I would recommend them. I probably could have done it a little bit less long-winded than a 15-minute rendition, other than me just basically saying, watch the Honeydew podcast, watch Jeremiah Wonders, watch the docuseries Perfect Crime, and check out the new Patrice O'Neal documentary on Comedy Central. I said it in 20 seconds. So I probably could have edited myself a little bit there, but that's not what the laughatpat podcast is about. So yeah, that's it for the show. I wanted to shout out my friend Brian, if he's watching. I'm wearing his shirt. I don't know how I ended up with this shirt. I think he lent it to me at some point, and then it was one of those things that slowly just became mine. I'm sorry, Brian, if you're watching. And it was lent, I think, just as a casual running shirt. It's slowly become just a favorite shirt of mine. I just like it. It's a nice shirt. So thank you, Brian, for letting me steal this shirt from you. Hope you're doing good out there. And I have more clothes than I wear on the podcast. It's just a lot of them have some sort of level of green. I own a little too much tie-dye, and the tie-dye doesn't do great against the green screen, and green definitely doesn't. So I got to stick with my basics in the wardrobe category. All right, that's enough. Thank you guys once again so much for watching. Of course, subscribe to the channel. Of course. You got to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. Hit the like button, all of that good stuff. Check out my 1 year Laugh at Pat anniversary late night show special. It's probably better than this podcast, if I'm being honest. And yeah, next week we will be back with my interview with comedian Chris Doring. I've been doing a bunch of interviews and storing them up. We're going to have a lot more podcast interviews on the show that I'm super excited about, talking about creativity, comedy, music, art, travel, all sorts of different life stories that I'm excited to share with you guys. So we're going to have more podcasts, more comedy sketches coming. And so stay tuned for all of that. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys watch the Laughatpat podcast. Patchats.